Over the next few weeks, I will be doing a team-by-team recap of the 2014 NFL season. How it will work is I will start off with the worst and work my way down all the way to the best. The last two teams that will be covered will be the loser of Super Bowl 49 and then the winner, the champions of Super Bowl 49. But that's a long ways away and a few weeks away. I'm here today to start off with the worst of the worst. In this case, I'm starting off with the team that ended up earning the right to have the number one overall pick in the 2015 NFL draft, and that is, of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When you look at this Buccaneers organization, 2014 was supposed to be the beginning of better times to come. The Lovie Smith era was beginning. It seemed like he was a really good fit for this organization and that he would slowly right the ship. And many people, myself included, were expecting bigger and better things out of this Buccaneers organization this year. Maybe not playoffs, but I was expecting a team that could win somewhere between 5 to 7 games and be competitive in most games. And frankly, that just really didn't happen. You know, the Buccaneers, to me, showed when we always hear about if you miss on a quarterback, it sets your organization back 5 years. Well, if you look at it, they drafted Josh Freeman in the first round in 2009. 5 calendar years later, 2014, the bottom really, truly, completely fell out on the organization, even more so than it did in 2013 under Greg Schiano. Now you see what everybody talks about. When you miss on a quarterback, it can set your organization back 5 years or more. And in this case, that is kind of what happened. This was the bottom falling out. This is the bottom of bottom points. You can't really get any lower than this if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With that said, though, I applaud the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization for not overreacting, for not panicking, for sticking to the plan, understanding that maybe potentially this was going to happen, and being wise enough to see that the horizons look brighter. Things could get better in a hurry, similar to what happened to the Chiefs going from 2012 to 2013. They went from number one pick to a playoff team, to what happened with the 2013-2014 Houston Texans, going from having the number one overall pick in 2013 to being a team that went 9-7 and came this close to making the playoffs in the 2014 season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have some of those elements in place that suggest to me a similar type of turnaround is very possible for them in 2015. When you look at the story of this season, yes, they went 2-14. They had some ugly, bad, terrible losses, namely that Thursday night game in Week 3 to the Atlanta Falcons, a few weeks later to the Baltimore Ravens, where Flacco just went nuts on them in the first half. You look at this team and you say 2-14, some of those blowout losses, this team stunk. They were the worst team in the league. Well, I don't think that's the case. You're looking at a team that in 2014 lost half of their games, half of the games of the season. 8 out of a total 16 games. 8 of their 14 losses came by 7 points or less. So what that suggests, what that indicates, is that while Tampa Bay lost 14 out of 16 games, and while they had the worst record in the league, tied for it with Tennessee, that is that they were in a lot of ball games. If you have a different break here, a different break there, this might be a team that still could have won 5 or 6 games. They were in a position to win several games. And even when you look at one of the 2 victories they did manage to squeak out in 2014, it was against a Pittsburgh Steelers team that ended up winning the AFC North. 8 losses by 7 points or less. 8 of them. That indicates to me that this team is closer than people envisioned and that the record is somewhat misleading. But part of the problem is when you look at this team is that they scored 17 points or less in 12 out of 16 games. 3/4 of their games this year, they scored 17 points or less. At the end of the day in the NFL, even if you're a defense-first organization, which is what the Buccaneers are going to try and be under Lovie Smith, and that's what they need to be if Lovie Smith is to be a success and the Buccaneers want to be successful under him, you still have to be able to score more than 17 points a game. And when you score 17 points or less in 3/4 of your games, it's not hard to see why you finished the season with a 2-14 record. You look at this Buccaneers team, 29th in points scored, 29th in rushing yards on offense, 25th in passing yards on offense. This was just not a good offensive football team. You look at guys like Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson, and they're stud wide receivers on the outside, but you have an older offensive line that isn't really all that good. You lack a running game. You don't have much at tight end, and you definitely don't have much of anything at quarterback. It combines to provide you with an offense that really isn't going to win you much in the way of football games and struggles, frankly, to even keep you in those ball games. This was a bad offensive team, as reflected by the fact that they scored 17 points or less in 12 of their 16 games this year. And even defensively, I'm kind of actually surprised that they had that many close games because they weren't really that good. They finished 25th in the league in points allowed. Sure, the big blowout losses to Baltimore and Atlanta don't help those numbers a little bit, throws them a little bit off of kilter. But they were 28th against the pass, tied for 22nd in the league in sacks. So this was a team that gave up a lot of yards through the air and a team that struggled to generate a consistent pass rush on opposing quarterbacks. Something that Lovie Smith prides himself on with his cover 2, Lovie 2 system is to be able to generate pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Buccaneers just weren't that good at it. So this is a team that has a lot of holes. When you go 2-14, you got problems everywhere. You really do. And just about everybody is replaceable. Just about everybody is replaceable. If you have a 2-14 team and you think this is a need or that isn't a need, you're a moron. Pretty much everything is a freaking need when you were 2-14. Before the season, this was a Buccaneers team. Part of the reason we thought was going to be better than they ended up being was because of some of the free agent moves they made, some of the trades they made. They traded for Logan Mankins. They brought in Josh McCown, Evan Dietrich Smith, Michael Johnson, Alteron Werner. I mean, this is a team that spent some money in free agency. They were trying to change the culture and change the environment very quickly. And it really didn't work in terms of the results ultimately. And even when it goes in the draft, I was kind of surprised to see you bring in a defensive-minded head coach and you devote that entire first draft to picks on the offensive side of the ball. That was surprising to me a little bit. Now, they got a lot obviously, out of first-round pick Mike Evans. This guy is a stud. He's what I envisioned he was going to be coming out of Texas A&M. This guy is a matchup nightmare, 6'4", 6'5", 225 pounds, with the ability to leap out of the stadium, so to speak. A guy that doesn't get a ton of separation but gets enough. He's incredibly physical, and he's a little quicker than you might expect. He is a difference maker in a class of wide receivers this past year that was full of them. Evans is a future star. He's frankly probably already a star, and he's a real building block for that Tampa Bay Buccaneers on offense going forward. The problem is they really don't have a lot of other building blocks. On the defensive side of the ball, you might say Gerald McCoy and Levante David, and you're accurate in that, but they really don't have much else on defense. Let's really be honest here, especially when you look at the statistics, when you look at the fact that this team finished 2-14. Again, when you finish with the worst record in the league and end up with the #1 overall pick, you pretty much have needs everywhere. So what do the Buccaneers need to address this offseason? First and foremost, they have to find that guy at quarterback. It can't be a veteran. It's got to be a young guy. That means either Mariota or Winston. Time will tell who that choice is going to be. Time will tell who that guy should be. But Lovie Smith hopefully will have learned his lessons from Chicago, where he had to go through years with Rex Grossman and Jay Cutler and understand the importance of having that franchise quarterback, that young quarterback to build everything that you do around. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers must find that quarterback. Because if they can find a young franchise quarterback, which they have the ability to with either Winston or Mariota, a guy that can instantly come in and be loads better than McCown or Mike Glennon, you're talking about an offense that could score more than 17 points in some of those games and would be able to take some of those 7-point losses and turn them into victories. And then you're looking at an entirely different Buccaneers team for the 2015 season. But they have other needs in that. They need some help on that offensive line. You got to be able to protect that young quarterback. You also need to be able to help out your running game, which was kind of lacking in Tampa as well. I'm not sure that they have that long-term answer at running back on the roster. Doug Martin disappointed in 2014. Bobby Rainey is more of a utility type of guy, a backup type of guy. Charles Sims, a player I like coming out of West Virginia, but I'm not sold that he's an every down back for the Buccaneers and what they're going to need going forward. They need help on that offense. They maybe don't have to pay so much attention to the wide receiver position. They're probably pretty good there. But everything else on offense needs to be upgraded desperately bad. And even on the defensive side of the ball, they need an impact player at safety. I referenced earlier in the year that the Buccaneers had nothing at safety. And I stand by that. They have nothing at safety. And in order for Lovie Smith's system to work, he has to have that three-technique tackle up the middle, which is what he has in Gerald McCoy. He needs that all-purpose weak side linebacker, that dominant force in the middle level of the defense, which is what he's got in Devontae David. What he needs now is an impact player in the secondary, that guy that could do a little bit of everything, that guy that could be a center fielder, that guy that could play in the box, that guy that can come up and defend opposing slot receivers and tight ends. And that guy simply is not on the Buccaneers roster, and it needs to be if this Buccaneers defense is going to grow and improve in 2015 in year 2 under Lovie Smith, and they're going to get more out of that system. They also need help at defensive end. Michael Johnson was okay, but not great this year, and they really don't have anything else around him. They need more help for Gerald McCoy and Michael Johnson. It's got to come on that defensive line, particularly on the edge. The things that happened to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2014, maybe we should have envisioned, because this was a team that was trying to plug a bunch of holes through free agency, which is never a good sign. They really didn't have a legitimate, for sure, quarterback. There was a lot of questions about either McCown or Glennon. It didn't matter. Looking at the fact that they had missed so badly 5 years ago on Josh Freeman, we should have been able, frankly, to see this coming, and we did, and that's on us. But what I can also say is that I can see where the big-time potential is for a big-time Buccaneers turnaround in 2014, as has been done in similar years by teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and Houston Texans. If the Buccaneers can find that quarterback and find a way to win some of those games that they lost in a close fashion by 7 points or less, you're looking at a team, especially looking at the freaking NFC South, that I might even pick to win that division in 2015 with 8 or 9 wins. I'm deadly serious.